pleased to introduce now the Technology Leaders Forum panel, and please welcome to the stage for the first time today the CEO and founder of BizClick Media Group, who is moderating this session, and that's Glenn White. Glenn,
thank you.
And now, welcome back, he was here just a minute ago, Richard Benjamins.
Hello again.
Thank you, Richard. If you just take that chair. And also from earlier today, Cameron Khan. And finally, Jamshid Vagan. Thank you all for staying with us. I will leave you in the more than capable hands of Mr. White.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. So, I think, or I hope we'll all agree that 4 excellent presentations this morning so far, and I'm very pleased that you guys could join me on our very first Technology Leaders panel. This is a bit of an open forum, but I've chosen somewhat of an agenda for us to talk about, and that agenda starts with understanding where technology is today, where technology is taking us, lessons from the past, where we may be going in the future. So I think the first question, and I think maybe Jamshid, I could ask that to you, okay? Given your experience, tell me your views on why the world has turned into this digital economy, this digital landscape.
Yeah, I would say why not? But
yeah, why not? A very good answer.
Yeah. So I think the world becoming agile, the things becoming closer, and we really need to have, especially with the data and the processes, I mean, we need to get to an effective organizations. So that has just become digital becoming the key to almost every aspect. You look at the governments, you look at the enterprises, even you look at our own personal life, especially on this pandemic, it just really showed that is essential. But the thing, again, like what I was talking the other one, like everything else, is that what is the right thing to do and what is the right way of doing the things there? Especially going to digital, kind of the society, digital business, digital government. If you're going to take what we have been doing before, we just simply digitize them, I think that might not be the right thing to do, because if the processes were inefficient, you're going to try to do the bad thing or inefficient thing faster. So the key thing is really that you need to reimagine, if you're going to move to this kind of the digital world, digital government, digital business, digital personal life, there is a piece of it needs to be done, how that is going to look like. So really it should be digital life, digital world by design, trying to kind of design it the right way and then going that one. And it looked like that is the path is going on. And the pandemic accelerated and was a catalyst to get the things much faster moving.
And Cameron, the pandemic has impacted the entire world. And if anything, seems to have accelerated the digital path that many people are taking, companies, remote working. Talk to us about how that impacts, you've talked today, but how does that impact on the future of the workforce?
I think I just mentioned towards the end, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? So I completely agree with Dr. Vagan. First of all, humbled to be sitting in the same presence as 2 really distinguished people and sharing my views. But I think from a experience perspective, personally, we've seen the proliferation of digital tools and how organizations in their customer experience are trying to use that on individuals as consumers, and we're bringing the same behavior in our workplace. It was a bit difficult in the past when organizations still had those physical barriers of the office. They could control what tools you could use, still had the challenges of shadow IT, wasn't proliferating that much. Now that the work and your office is going back home, it was far easier for people to choose the right digital tools and use them. So I think the way it's accelerated is the IT HR and facilities teams had opened up their policies and had to, within reason.
Yeah.
And then it's given more, I guess, vote to the employees to use what they felt best, which at the end of the day was what the customer experience product were, digital in nature. And obviously with tools such as AI, they're so specialized and personalized, it's difficult to use anything else, right? You get the
And technology leaders, CIOs, CTOs, and the business strategy of technology, companies had to go 18 months, 20 months ago, almost overnight from a physical to a virtual environment. How key was the digital tool sets that, for IBM, for NTT, Richard, maybe you, Telefonica, enabling you to do that?
Yes, it was, of course, very important. What we saw is that in the first month after the pandemic, we had all our predictions for the whole year in terms of data consumption through our network already done. Yeah, I think luckily there was no issue. Yeah, the networks hold very well.
They were robust enough.
There was no crash whatsoever. But we saw, things like Zoom peaking, Netflix peaking. Everything was going through the roof, and as far as the workers in the workspace, we already had a policy by working from home. Yeah, so we had about 5 or 10% of people who always work from home,
Yep.
and suddenly it went to 90% or 95%. But actually, it went very well. Actually, it went so well that people started complaining about they actually started working more and being more productive, because instead of walking from one room to another room or one building to another building, they had just had one click to another click, and you went meeting. You completely,
So
overworked.
that's also from a technology leader's perspective. I've heard Zoom fatigue,
Oh, yeah.
webinar fatigue. How do you guys, when you have your teams, and you're encouraging people to embrace your technologies, how do you also make sure that with this remote environment, this digital world, that you keep people engaged?
Yeah, I think one thing is that from organization, because actually the IBM CEOs talked several times saying to the employees, it's okay, I'm in a meeting, my kids come to the room, just kind of in a normal situation, it's not normal. So they think some of the things used to become very rigid, they're just more flexible. And the other thing really also, some of the time responsibility come to us, because we are the one initiating some of these conferences, video conference, everything. We need to be a little bit of the careful and cautious, ourselves and others also, trying to do. But I think it's just kind of is a new learning for everyone going through it. We have used teleconference, everything before, but this is a different ball game. It's not just doing it once or twice a day. It's all day going through that one there. So I think the organizations, the one I have seen, they are adjusting. But as we were talking about the technology side, some of these tools, they're kind of the interoperability there. So the challenge usually comes, you go to a meeting, you have to use WebEx, the other one you're going to use a team, you need to use everyone, and everyone is different, it takes a thing. So, but like everything else, you find a way to do it when you have to do it.
Okay, cool.
Maybe I'll add a couple of things in there as well. I completely agree that the concept, the context switching, you find a way, but also I think at the moment, the way teams are structured, most of the managers, I was discussing with some people outside, most managers weren't trained to be managers. They were good at their job and got elevated to become managers. How do they help make sure their teams are okay? From a wellness perspective, are they burning themselves out? What are the signs of some of that burnout? Absolutely, I'm very guilty of that. Without realizing, I ended up with 8 to 9 hour, 1 hour meetings back to back, because it's so easy. Click a button, next meeting. You don't need to find the room and set. Following from that, I went from 8 back-to-back meetings to 16 back-to-back meetings, half an hour each, and then try to shove in some calls in between as well. And finally realizing this cannot sustain itself. So I think what it actually needed was a manager who intervened and said, look, that's not right. You need to help yourself. You're human at the end of the day. So some mediation in there, either using tools such as AI, and again, anonymized, you can't go too far into really into data and trying to take too much data from employees, but using some of that anonymized data to call out signs for that fatigue, signs for that burnout, and putting in some tools and rules in place. As an example, some policy organizations are putting in policies not to allow more than 50-minute meetings, right, back to back. You have to, according to the rules, you cannot schedule a meeting more than 50 minutes. Similarly, there are some organizations that are not allowing email after 5 p.m. Unless it's important. There's some, I don't know what the right answer is, but it needs mediation from some people, and I think it's the people managers and the HR who have to be really active in mediating that.
You can have an AI system that does some meetings for you.
Absolutely. I would love that. I would love that.
100% the advocate of AI for sure. But I think it's a very good point that we bring up well-being in a digital environment, because when you see someone who you think at the office has worked and worked and worked, you can physically see that. But when you only share perhaps the calendar, I found it myself. I've talked to many executives who, have got close to burnout because they've done too much. So I think that calendar management or that diary management becomes very, very important in the future workforce. Okay. I wanted to talk to you also about digital ecosystems. Okay, technology isn't just about one system; it becomes a part of lots of bits of many systems. Okay, what's your view on when you're building a digital ecosystem, in particularly how to trust and how to choose the right partners, the right vendors that you might be working with? IBM's a good example of a massive partner network. NTT and Telefonica the same. What's the feeling as far as from enterprise and building digital ecosystems?
Yeah. I think like everything else, any type of partnership with the human, there should be a set of the principles. They need to agree on that one. I mean, because the whole this thing coming ecosystem together to serve a purpose. So they need to share a common purpose. For example, you mentioned IBM and others. So there are, when you believe in a kind of, for example, the open system, enabling the people, so you look for the partners in that kind of the area. I think the key thing with building that kind of effective ecosystem is that agreeing on a set of the principles, and also just continue, I don't want to use the term governance, but something like that one, making sure everyone is track on that purpose and going through the same kind of direction.
Okay.
I completely agree. I would say if you look at ecosystem, but also if you look at technology and partners, I would say organizations are now having to move away from having suppliers and looking at more partners, because previously all organizations had a big behemoth of IT organizations because of cost reasons, and also the way technology is proliferating everywhere. They cannot maintain a whole IT organization that manages that. They are more reliant on their technology partners. And I think that's where the technology partners like NTT, we're moving away from just having SLAs to say this much uptime. We're moving to experience level agreements to talk about if you're going to partner with you as an organization to provide a service for your employee, we're going to sign some joint principles around what are those experiences that we will measure for your employees with a joint outcome, and then putting some governance in place to make sure we measure those experiences as opposed to paper SLAs that, to be honest, didn't mean much in the past.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add to that, Richard?
Well, actually, one of the lessons that I describe in my book is also about this relationship with third parties. Yeah? And there are many failed AI and big data experiences because they think, well, we give this whole thing to an external provider and we disconnect, and then they do something, and then when they come back, it doesn't fit at all. Not with the culture, not with the systems. So it's very important to work on a long-term perspective and really as partners. And I think it's more and more important also for us that the partner is a responsible business partner. Yeah? So they have a fair supply chain. They care about climate change. So those things are, and they have, if it's about AI, they also have a kind of ethical principles in the use of this technology. And I think in the future it's going to be even more important because what Europe is now speaking about is about the new data economy, where so Europe lost the B2C fight against the big tech, but the B2B fight on data is still there through the European industry. And there's going to be a lot of data sharing, and it is all needs to be based on trust. So it's going to be very important.
So that brings me on to one of my questions, because I think that I often hear from people that, you know, data is the new oil, data is the new gold. And then I hear from other technologists that really it's the data set, not big data, but just can you analyze or can you get analytics from the data? So what is the future power of data inside enterprise?
Well, I mean, I think if we speak about data or big data, it's not so much whether we speak about a specific type of data. It's a concept. Yeah? It's a new way of thinking. Yeah? Data, like 15 years ago, there were lots of IT systems that generated a lot of data, and it was just nothing happened with it. Yeah? Maybe to do some bug fixing. So it was just an exhaust product of an operation.
Yep.
Today, it's an asset. It's a strategic asset that's being managed as a financial asset or a real estate asset. There is a chief data officer. There is a team taking care of the data. So there's a huge change that has going on. And in the future, it will be normal. It will be the new normal. So no organization will build something without thinking. I mean, if I want to have an app with some functionalities, I just want the app, and that's it. But it solves my problem. Now, many companies already, if I build the app, I want to know what data is that app generating and what data do I need to capture. Can I capture that? Am I sure that I'm the owner of the data and not a provider? So that's the new thing that is going to happen, and that will really scale up this data. And I think the chief data officer is such a kind of a transformation function that will disappear. In the future.
And I think that just on that data, one other point as well, as you're generating all of that data, in the past you'd need data scientists, engineers to actually make sense of it. Now you have cloud tools, you can actually apply those models with a lot of low-code, no-code concepts. So the focus more is what do you want to get out of that data as well, trying to figure out what that insight means as opposed to engineering that, as you said, the byproduct of that data. So there's a lot of focus on what outcomes can you get from that extrapolation as well, rather than just engineering it.
And I wanted to ask one question on this, and that was often when we talk about cloud, we will also talk about cyber. Now, this is a technology leaders forum, not a cyber security forum, but we are challenged by the essence of cyber security today as we have entered a cloud era. What are your thoughts on some of the latest things that are happening and what we need to do about areas of cyber such as ransomware attacks that we've seen all around the world?
Yeah. See, the thing is, I mean, the reason that the cybersecurity and security in every aspect becomes important because traditionally most organizations think of the security as after the fact. We don't design for the security. It's not security by design. So I think there is lots of work going on. There is lots of the approaches is coming up, making sure you do the security by design. If we do some of these things now, which is starting to go on, it's going to make our future system to be much more robust. And this issue is going to be easier, relatively speaking, to handle.
So you're designing the security at the front?
Yeah, I mean, security by design. I'm building a system. I mean, the security should be another parameter, like the performance, like the user experience, like everything else we do. This should be another security design. Every component needs to keep that one in the mind. If we do those type of things, which is started happening now, under the different titles, that is going to help us to go. If we don't do that, if we keep designing the system and after it's done, say, okay, by the way, I realize this is not secure, let's just kind of do something to it, then we're going to be just kind of having the same challenge.
Cool, thank you. I'm cognizant of time, so I've got two parts left for my questions, and I think that we're going to open up to some of the questions that have come in. I think for Richard, I'd love to hear in your presentation My thoughts go that I hear a lot: trustworthy AI, ethical AI, AI for good. Okay, what is your view on how organizations as well as the people will feel truly comfortable with data moving into AI in the future?
I think the first thing is that people need to understand to a better extent what is happening, yeah? Because now it's a kind of black box that nobody understands, and there are some headlines that they hear about it, and I think that's not helping. Yeah? I think also that many of the things that are coming out now that are these negative headlines can actually be avoided quite easily. Yeah? It's like you said about security should not be an afterthought. It's a security by design. The same thing. Yeah? That if you want to make a responsible use of this technology, you have to start from. If you want to design a system, the first question is actually, should we design the system? The fact that we can do it, think about facial recognition. Yeah. In certain use cases, should we do it or not? And once you decide to do it, now make sure that you understand what's the impact on people. For instance, if you do all those systems make errors. Yeah, we all know that. So the false positives and the false negatives. What's the impact of a false negative on the people? Is there any impact? Yeah? So all those questions you have to do at front, and then during the whole process of building the system in an ecosystem, you have to revisit them because you always go one step further. Yeah? Then you implement them. And that is a methodology that is not difficult to do. It's just a methodology they have to execute, but it has a change management process behind because something people have to learn. They have to make them a habit. If you do that, so if organizations do that, then it's okay. If, let's say, citizens or customers and consumers do a bit better, their best in understanding when they accept privacy policy, yes or no, what's happening with that, I think then we're also a step further. Yeah? And then there is the governmental part that also has to play a role.
Okay, thank you. Guys?
Yeah, I think this AI, I have a problem with this one is we keep using is artificial intelligence. I mean, everyone's trying to say create the intelligent, something is going to replace intelligence. But if we had said at the beginning, this is really augmented intelligence, it's not artificial intelligence. And then the people designing the system, they design it in a way trying to augment intelligence. Because if you look at, again, like what was done, when you look at the whole thing, I mean, easily the bias can come to a system. If the data sample you pick up to train the model, it was just kind of a representation from a small population, people, data, and everything else. By default, your system is going to be there. So really, we need to look at, because the problem, I mean, the whole society has with some of the technologies that we just kind of think everything is a silver bullet to solve every problem. If we understand what is the limitation, and when we go to the model development, whatever else, just make sure we took all this thing here. The same thing I said, security by design. We need to say ethics by design for AI also. And just thinking about that, in most of the AI system, really need to be augmenting the intelligence of the people and the workforce.
Cool, okay. Okay, Scott, I'm going to ask whether you have some questions.
I do, actually.
And firstly, just I want to say thanks to all three of you for participating in the panel. It's been great.
Thank you.
Over to you, Scott.
Okay, yeah, we have had some questions. Oh, sorry, yeah, thank you. We have had some questions come through. And feel free to address these as you see fit. As the world progresses into a new digital age, what do you feel the big changes will be in the next 3 years in the world of an enterprise business? Maybe Jamshid, I'll throw that one at you first.
Obviously, there's going to be changes in technology, but the thing is that technology by itself, if we don't change the processes, the culture, I mean, all different aspects of it, which we call the soft aspect. So we're not going to benefit that much from this kind of technology evolution. So it's going to be, for sure, that one is going to be changes in the way the people work, the way the people collaborate, the way they're going. So technology by itself is not going to be sufficient. And as we go through that one, we're going to find out what is the right way of working, what the right way of the collaborating, what is the right process, what is the right operating model.
Okay, Cameron?
Yeah, I would say, I think the way we're changing, we're going through another industrial revolution, right? So we will need to figure out what is the real value of people in an organization. You can build AI for it to program itself, build the product itself. It can do pretty much everything itself in principle. So what's the real value of employees in an organization, and then double down on that, invest in that. I think that is, I think a lot of organizations still don't get that, right? They're still trying to say, well, that job can probably be automated, so maybe I don't need that person. Reskilling and actually leveraging the value from those employees is an untapped, I think, opportunity that we can really do more on. And we'll probably see that going forward as well.
And Richard?
Well, in a 3 years time frame, I think we will do more of the same. Yeah? We started this revolution. I think more companies and public administrations will use data and AI to a better extent. It's far from perfect, but it's moving forward. Responsibility will gain more than it has today. Climate change will be more important to consider by design, also in all kinds of designs. And I think also the current economic model that only looks at profit and as an afterthought looks about climate and other things, I think there are some movements that will change that. Think about the donut economy. And I think that will be a bit stronger, but in no way it will really change the way how we are doing things.
Yeah.
I think, Scott, just quickly, a very selfish plug for us as well is that I have noted of late a major change in organizations that seem to only see digital transformation have now moved into an area of really trying to understand sustainability and their ESG strategies. And we've talked about that and how committed your three organizations are to the future of sustainability. So big plug for us, February 23rd and 24th next year is our sustainability show, and we will talk very heavily about sustainable technology and the future of digital. So just a little bit of a selfish plug, Scott.
Not selfish at all. Any plug's a good plug. Now, if there's any questions from the floor, actually, we do have a microphone available. So if anyone does have any questions, please just put your hand up. Okay. Gentleman at the front, just bear with us. If you can just start just by saying your name before you ask your question, that'd be great, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Just first off, it's been amazing to hear all three of you speak so in depth about obviously your three skill sets. And the main thing I want to hear from you all as individuals is what you feel has been the biggest thing you've learned individually throughout the last few years, and how you're going to use that to move forward in not only the career, but with the business.
Okay, thank you. Let's start in reverse order. We'll go with Richard.
Okay, that's a tough question, yeah? The biggest thing I've learned, I think the biggest thing I learned is that if you want to use technology for good, that's not going by itself. Yeah? So currently it's not a business. Companies are doing those things for reputational ESG things, but not because it is sustainable as such. I thought there are so many things you can do with data, COVID, hunger, child poverty. But if you want to do this project, you don't find any finance to do it. Yeah? So that's one of the things I learned. It's not a nice learning, but something I'm committed to change.
And Cameron.
Yeah, good that you went first because it gave me a couple of seconds to think about it. I think I personally learned a lot. I think maybe a couple of things. One, empathy, right? We all went through really challenging situations, and really empathizing with your colleagues, with the people you live with, really put you in others' shoes, and it gets you thinking in a different way. And I think that's something I really learned. And also resilience. The need, first of all, the ability for people to adapt. It really surprised me. We went into the pandemic with very negative connotations of what's going to happen, doom and gloom, but we saw people really step up and actually evolve themselves to what the need of the hour was. So agility in terms of individuals, how they look about their day, but also reskilling. I've seen people doing the same thing day in and day every day, but now stepping up and actually reskilling themselves to see what else can I do, where in the past it'd be very difficult to get them out of their typical behavior. So those two things for me are really important lessons, and I want to keep hold of that going forward as well.
Okay, great. And finally, Jamshid?
Yeah, I would agree. The empathy was one critical thing in different aspects. One was just kind of, like we talked about, everyone one meeting after the other one, and you see the people's family coming. You start just kind of be more cautious, that piece of it. And also, in the work we have been doing, we open up, you see, your colleague is coming here, the kids come here, they want to sit that one there. So we got to know each other much more with some of the colleagues we have been working on. And the other one was kind of, be more careful about when you're working in a distributed team with the time zones. For example, I work with everyone across the world, so you don't want to wake up the guys, at 3 o'clock in the morning to do that one. So actually, I built more close relationship with the colleagues I have been working with in the past, and also just agree with the other thing the team said.
I think also, Scott, the mention of well-being for people is massively important. But I think also we've gone from a mobile environment on the phone to an environment where the laptop has become quite fashionable again. And actually, you actually get to know people a lot better because you are prepared to do the FaceTime. So even though you talk to many people who still haven't met their team, who've joined a new company, they haven't physically met their team, but they know each other. Okay, people have adapted to coffee breaks and wine evenings virtually. Okay, but I think also the future, what I've learned is I think we will always be a hybrid environment in the future. There will be some where we can be at home or virtual and do really well at that, and there'll be other times where we'll be able to, hopefully COVID-free or learning to live with COVID, where we'll use the technology for good in a physical environment as well, a bit like today.
Absolutely. I think that's probably a great point to end it on that. Actually, no, we'll have one more question then, because we are going into lunch after this. So if you could just, again, if you just start by just mentioning your name, we'll clean that up, don't worry. Mention your name and maybe where you're from, and if it's
sorry about it.
If it's a specific person.
My name is Reshef. I'm working for Beyond Minds, the same company as Roy presented it earlier. My question is for Richard, and that if you can give us your main free tips, let's say, for companies or vendors that would like to partner with you and eventually sell you their product or their idea. How to work with you? What are you looking for them? And if you can put the emphasis on access to confidential data and for the whole process.
Okay, so I think the first thing is have a kind of ethical sales process, which means do not spam. For large companies, do not try to enter from as many as different places as possible, because in the end, it comes to the same place, and then it's not a good impression. So build long-term relationships, but show your capacity, your capability where you are differential. If you are an AI company today, it's very hard to differentiate because, I mean, every company is doing AI today. Yeah? So it's a synonym for technology or for digital almost, which I think is ridiculous. But it's the case. Yeah? So if you really are an AI company, and I believe you are, from what I've heard, then try to make that clear. Yeah? Try to differentiate yourself at the capacity level from others. But don't fall in the trap of the more context. Think about quality and not about quantity.
Okay, guys, I think it's now time for our lunch, so I'd like to thank my fellow panelists for a really great discussion today, and thank you all for attending. Thank you.